A fascinating, if quite alarming, spectacle is unfolding worldwide. It's not quite the collapse of the Roman Empire yet, but things are definitely unsettled. And no, it's not just Trump's political and economic wrecking ball. He's more symptom than cause, the inevitable result of a long brewing shift in political norms. And the protoplast of these changes, at least in the Eastern Hemisphere, is him again, Hungary's ever-resourceful Prime Minister. And maybe him too. Hello, Erdogan. But when it comes to manipulating alliances and milking EU membership, Orbán reigns supreme, the master architect of the illiberal playbook. This model is what we'll talk about today. Think of it as a how-to guide for aspiring autocrats. To be shrewd as Master Orbán, you need the secret sauce. State capture must proceed insidiously. Weaken institutions, stifle dissent, but outright autocracy avoid you must, to maintain a veneer of electoral legitimacy and keep EU funds flowing. People must think they still have a say. Foreign politicians have paid handsomely for Orbán's secret sauce, with Habon bragging about advising Trump's campaign in Florida. These alliances are scaffolded by opaque financial networks, enabling the siphoning of corruption money. In a charming display of international teamwork, funds evaporated from Hungary's National Bank were parked at the Polish company Globe Trade Center during the Law and Justice tenure. Orbán is now trying to claw back these assets. And every aspiring autocrat must know how to play his friends and patrons wisely. A very diversified portfolio has allowed Orbán to navigate the seemingly contradictory interests of Trump, Putin, Xi and the EU, all while exploiting Europe's internal squabbles. To his advantage, upholding the rule of law within the EU often feels like herding cats. Hence, the EU's approach has been mostly mild, to put it mildly. The European Parliament started Article 7 proceedings, the so-called nuclear option, against Hungary back in 2018. And it's been in the pipeline ever since, because 4/5 of the EU Council must vote in favour of it, meaning Hungary needs just one ally to block it. The Trojan horse is, you guessed it, Hungary. With billions in debt to Russia, its leader has every incentive to play nice. Last year, Orbán signed a policy granting Russians and Belarusians fast-track EU access through a national card scheme. It allows holders to work in Hungary and travel visa-free within the Schengen area, raising serious espionage concerns among other EU countries.
Here is one man who has seemingly achieved the impossible. He is raking billions from the European Union, giving them to his family and friends, while also lining their pockets through fraudulent financial schemes involving Russia. A man who brought his country into NATO only to have it default on most of its obligations, while deepening its strategic dependence on Russian energy. And here is a man whose son performs dubious deals in Africa under the guise of bringing development aid. Meet Hungary's Prime Minister, Viktor Orbán. In his 14-year tenure, Viktor Orbán has gravitated closer to the Putin regime. Beside ideological reasons, there seem to be many hidden incentives to that great friendship. Orbán's time in office has been rife with high-level deals in which political corruption involving Moscow came at a cost to state coffers, but also Hungary's energy security and future development. Did Orbán and his Fidesz sidekicks bet too much on the Russian business card? The largest economic undertaking of Viktor Orbán's cabinet has been the Parks power plant deal. Signed in 2014 with Russia's state energy corporation Rosatom, the agreement envisaged the modernization of Hungary's only nuclear power plant, which now produces 40% of the country's electricity. The deal was a surprise to everyone. There was no announcement, no public scrutiny, and all technical and financial aspects were classified. As we know now, the Russian state loaned Hungary 10 billion euros to pay for the investment and applied repayment conditions worthy of a scammer. The agreement had no guidelines for the modernization and no deadlines specifying when the power plant would be operational. In contrast, the plan for repaying the loan was very detailed. In the space of 30 years, Hungary would hand back the money plus interest even if the investment was unfinished and the plant not operational, while the interest rate for the repayment would increase from 3.9% to nearly 5% as the years went on. The risks would be borne solely by Hungarian taxpayers. The Fidesz government got its hands on the loan in 2019 and immediately started spending, granting millions to chosen oligarchs, awarding them with lucrative contracts to prepare the plant for the development, which actually never materialized. Unsurprisingly, the project encountered a great deal of problems and delays, not to mention the objections it raised in the European Union. As of today, works on the plant's modernization still hasn't started, but the loan's first repayment date is set for next year. But with creditors like these, who could doubt the warmth of Mr. Putin and Mr. Orban's relations? The Hungarian government not only intends to keep importing Russian oil and gas, but actually to expand its energy dependence on Russia. Why? Because it is personally lucrative for the Prime Minister. Take the example of the Hague pipeline. In 2011, with a government decree, the state-owned energy company MVMP received a de facto monopoly on the import of natural gas through the pipeline. But instead of capitalizing on this position and buying gas itself at preferential prices, MVMP signed a contract with a mysterious offshore company, giving it the sole right to buy gas on international markets, while MVMP just got a lousy fee as a gas transporter. That offshore company, called MET, was partially owned by one Russian investor and several Orban-friendly Hungarian oligarchs, including Orban's trusted special envoy István Garancsi. MET bought gas on international markets, sold it to MVMP at the Hungarian border, rebought it on the other side, paying a little extra for its transport, then sold the gas to Hungarian consumers. Because MET could negotiate gas prices at the source, it bought cheap. So, minus the small fee to MVMP, it could sell gas in Hungary at a higher price mark, since the average cost per cubic meter was set by long-term import contracts between Hungary and its main provider, Russia's Gazprom. So, in the end, the Hungarian government outsourced its monopolistic access to its own pipeline to an offshore company. 1 year after the scheme was made, the arrangement generated a loss of 1.6 million euro for the state coffers, while MET was able to pay its shareholders 177.4 million euros in benefits. But Viktor Orban not only outsources taxpayers' money, but he also diversifies his corruption portfolio. An investigation by the New York Times found that Orban uses European subsidies as a patronage system to enrich his friends and relatives, protect his political interests and punish his rivals. The Fidesz government has auctioned off thousands of acres of state land to Orban's family members and associates. For instance, the Prime Minister's childhood friend, Lawrence Meszaros of the Fidesz party, is now a billionaire. His companies are among the biggest beneficiaries of public procurement contracts in Hungary. Reportedly, 83% of the Meszaros family company's earnings come from EU sources. Once, when asked to explain the root of his achievements, Meszaros answered, God, luck and Viktor Orban. Orban has also made sure that his family gets its share of EU financial support. His son-in-law, István Tiborcs, owned a company that miraculously won contracts to supply Hungarian towns with EU-funded street lamps at prices inflated by 56%. And there is the cherry on the Zsebo cake, Viktor Orban's son, Gaspar. In November 2023, the Hungarian parliament voted in favor of deploying a 200-man military mission to Chad and its neighbors, including Niger. The troops have a peacekeeping agenda consisting of advisory, support and mentoring tasks in the field. Officially, this is Hungary's initiative to stop terrorism and tackle the root causes of migration. But shortly afterwards, the Hungarian investigative website Direct36 received information from a source in the Hungarian Defense Forces that 31-year-old Gaspar Orban was playing a pivotal role in launching the mission in Chad. Despite some ill-advised covert techniques in the shape of a frog-green fedora, Viktor's son is suspiciously secretive about his participation in the military mission, dodging cameras while accompanying Hungary's foreign minister. Some believe Gaspar's involvement in Russia-friendly Chad and Niger serves the role of a conduit between the Kremlin and Europe. Reports suggest potential involvement in Iranian deals to bolster Russian influence and counter French presence in Africa. Also, Hungary's prospective military presence in Chad raises the question of whether the numerous Wagner mercenaries on the ground will be cooperating with the Hungarians.
By late 2023, in just 3 months, Viktor Orban's government had spent over 76 million euros on propaganda. The funds flowed to pro-Kremlin news media and even more extravagantly to sites where propaganda came wrapped in erotic content. The Hungarian government always excelled at fabricating boogeymen like Brussels or George Soros and amplifying conspiracy theories. With Trump back in power, it recalibrated its smear campaigns to target Ukraine and independent journalists. This had unraveled under the EU's gaze for so long that everyone eventually stopped noticing. But thankfully, the EU's permissive parenting style is finally over. 2 weeks ago, the European Commission sued Hungary at the EU Court of Justice over its Russia-style foreign agent law, which targets NGOs, activists and journalists. The European Parliament backs the case and 9 member states, including Poland, have joined the lawsuit, with 3 more expected to follow. Hungary's failure to tackle corruption has costed over €1 billion in future EU funding. As the New York Times puts it, Orban treats EU subsidies as a patronage system to enrich allies, protect his interests and punish rivals. With the EU's lowest score on Transparency International's corruption index, Hungary's government is openly labelled a kleptocracy. Starting this month, EU countries will have the power to deploy facial recognition tools according to suspected political affiliations, religious beliefs, sexual orientation or even union membership. So let's ask CIA-generated Viktor Orbán if he won't use these tools against opposition politicians.
I will take rule out of my friend Vladimir to target dangerous people who are not society, whose name is Péter Magyar and Momentum Movement and Vistula von der Leyen.
Well, the grammar might be wrong, but at least this version of him is refreshingly honest.